Hello and welcome. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Georgie from Healing Moons, and today we're going to be talking about self-care. Today's episode I wanted to do a little bit differently, so it will be more of a casual chat than something that is structured, because I feel that this is a subject that we need to go slowly with and show ourselves compassion as we do so, because there may be resistance that comes up to do with some of these ideas, your self-beliefs around them, and just generally going easy with ourselves. And this in itself is a big part of self-care. So it can look very different for different people, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Normally when we think of self-care, it's something like having a hot bath or treating ourselves to having a treatment done or getting our hair done, something along those sorts of lines. But there are a lot of other forms of self-care as well. So to me, my understanding, obviously take what resonates, leave the rest, as with all of my videos. But self-care is also to do with our boundaries as well. So and I'd like to point out as well that sometimes self-care can be confused with being selfish, and that is like the polar end of the scale, down one end. So to me, we've got people pleasing and bending over backwards and just doing anything and everything that people ask of us and not putting ourselves first at any point. And then down the other end, we've got selfish, thinking that we're better than someone else, and all of those sorts of traits that are more to do with the ego and basically just putting ourselves on a pedestal and not really taking into consideration other people. So there's two polar opposites, and we need to kind of aim for somewhere in the middle so that there is balance between the two. Because if you're down the other end of the scale, where you are putting everyone else first and not stopping to think about yourself at any point, your self-worth can be right down, like below the ground kind of a thing, because you're not valuing yourself and your time and things. So we've got the two different. So it's about valuing yourself enough to know when you're starting to run on empty, whether you need to take time out just to be and to do the things that you enjoy and love to do. I know this can be very difficult if you are running a household, looking after small children and things like that. Obviously they do take priority, but just taking 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day just to put yourself first, to do a little bit of self-care, whether that be for instance, whether you like reading, so you could take a moment to read a chapter before you go to bed of an evening, or whether it's doing yoga, meditation, mindfulness practices, which you can do throughout the day. These are all little things that you can stop and do that will only take you maybe 15 to 20 minutes max, depending on what time you have. And they can take as little as a couple of minutes, because the mindfulness practices you can literally do when you're brushing your teeth, when you're doing the washing up. So they fit in and they don't take up any extra time out of your day, but they are things that make you stop, check in with your body, see how you are doing. And under normal circumstances, I would also include, obviously at the time of recording, when we're not of a normal standpoint in life because of what's going on. But you could also include, because we're coming up to Christmas when I'm recording this, if you are we're going to see family, then you could also include that into setting your boundaries and self-care. So if you find that when you go home over the holiday seasons and things like that, you are dropping back in to that kind of that set point of where you were when you were living at home and your childhood conditionings and patterns and things that you fall into, you can set a boundary around that so that you aren't necessarily staying there. You can either rent a room somewhere close by, or you can limit how long you're there for to reduce the impact that that has on you, and making sure that you are looking after yourself as well as doing all of those things that you normally would do or want to do. And it's about really kind of checking in with yourself to see whether they are things that you want to do or whether you're doing them out of some kind of sense of obligation and things like that. So they're all steps that you can take to make sure that you are looking after yourself. This also includes not beating ourselves up. If we slip up, if we're practicing these things and you have a day where all of these new things that you've been doing, learning, teaching yourself, they all just seem to evaporate out of your head, and you have a day where you've fallen into old patterns, it's okay. It's part of the process. When you're working on yourself and doing the inner work that goes with it and all of the practices, it's like we take 2 steps forwards and 1 back. Sometimes it will feel like we've taken 2 or 3 steps back, but that's okay. It's all part of the process and the learning. And sometimes I think that this happens just so that we can see how far we've come. We drop back into that old pattern to re-experience what it was like when we were there in that place in our lives, and then we can stop, take a moment to drop in with ourselves and then see how far we've come, because we can forget those things. We forget to celebrate the small wins. So by taking those steps back unintentionally and dropping into old patterns and conditioning, it gives us that kind of wake-up call of how far we've come from that place as well. Something else to take into account: if you find yourself down the end of the spectrum where you have a pattern of putting everyone first and not knowing when to say no, and it's that automatic, if someone asks you to do something or for help with something, you automatically say yes without thinking. If you find yourself in that place, for a start, don't beat yourself up over it. Secondly, if you want to take that step, because we can't just go from that place to having all these amazing boundaries and knowing exactly what we want and how to say no and how to communicate what we need. We need to take it in baby steps. So when you can and you have enough of you available, then to take that step in between, try turning around and saying to someone, rather than automatically saying yes, just say, can I let you know? Because it creates that buffer of space so that you can go away, think about it, drop into your body and yourself and see how you really feel about it. Then, once you know what it is that you want to do and how you feel about it, you're more equipped and you're more aware to then be able to go back to them and give them a more authentic and honest answer from where you are and how you're feeling about it. And I know that this can bring up feelings of guilt or shame as well. So be gentle with yourself in this process if you find yourself at this point in the process of regaining your voice. Because we can be very cumbersome with our words when we're at this beginning stage. I'm talking from experience here as well. And it takes time to build up that muscle. It's like an emotional or psychological muscle that we build up over time of learning how to prioritize ourselves in a way. Although I'm trying to be careful with my wording because I know that can trigger something in us as well. So it's just a matter of being gentle with ourselves and reconnecting with our bodies at this point, because when we're stuck in that kind of pattern, a lot of the time we'll find that we're up in our heads about it. It's automatic, it's all coming from here, and we aren't in our bodies. It's like everything stops at the neck, and we don't drop down to see how we're feeling in our gut, in our heart, and just in the rest of our being. We don't stop. We're up here and everything's quick, monkey mind kind of scenario. So you can also use mindfulness practices to drop into your body, to reconnect with that part of yourself, which can be uncomfortable when emotions start to come to the surface. But that's okay, it's part of the process, and give yourself, when that happens, give yourself the time to feel it and process it. So you can use practices like when you are when you're washing up, brushing your teeth, eating, drinking, and it's about checking in with your senses to start with. So you can even use a glass of water if you wanted to. So you would stop, take a few deep breaths, and notice how the air feels on your skin as it goes in your nose, because the idea is that you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. So how does the air feel when it's going in? How does it feel in your nostrils and going down into your body? And then how does it feel when it comes out? And just taking 1 minute, 2 minutes, just to stop, do the breathing exercise. And you want to be relaxing your body at the same time so that your diaphragm is relaxed. So you want to relax your stomach muscles and let the air flow in through your nose and then breathing out through your mouth and noticing how it feels. And then also, once you've connected with your body in that way, you can also stop and notice sounds outside of your body. You don't have to actively look or search out the sounds, but just see what comes to your ears. So you're taking in your different senses. So we've had touch, sound, and then also taking in your surroundings, because you can do those bits with your eyes closed. And then if you open your eyes, you can then look around at your surroundings. And it's not about naming things or anything like that. I know that our mind will automatically do that. Just acknowledge it and let it go. It's okay if you have thoughts. Thoughts are a natural process, but it's about acknowledging them and then letting them pass. And it's more about taking in the shapes and colours that are around you than any of the real details of what it is. So that's another part of dropping in and being present in the moment. And you can use a glass of water to do a similar thing. So you take a sip of water, just a small sip, hold it in your mouth, and really stop and think about how it feels, what the sensations are, and acknowledging them. So how the water feels in your mouth, and as you hold it, does it change? Warming up in your mouth, does it taste different after a few seconds? And then once you've done that, you can swallow it. And then if you want to, you can experiment with a slightly larger sip and see if that's different from the first one. It's about being curious and to what's happening in the moment, because mindfulness is just a practice to bring us back to the present moment, so that we're not anxious thinking about the future or feeling sad thinking about the past. It's about being present to our lives right now, because life is just a string of moments. It's not about where we're going, what we're striving for. It's about where we're at right now. If we can get comfortable with that, we can reduce our stress levels so much and bring more joy into the moment, because we'll start to notice the small things that bring us happiness and joy in the moment, without feeling like, oh, once I get this amount of money in the bank, once I get this promotion, once I get this new job, whatever it is for the material, physical thing that we're striving for, if we just let ourselves off the hook and be in the moment, we can find happiness there without needing those external things a lot of the time, especially in the Western world that we live in. I know it's going to be different for different people depending on where you're watching this and what your life situation is, but there are small joys to be found in everyday moments. And then once we've done these things and these practices, then we can start to register what our gut reaction is to things and how we feel about things in the moment. Once we've managed to drop back into our bodies, then you'll notice when you're making a decision about something, you'll either feel excited and joyous about it, and it feels good to be saying yes or to be saying no. But if you're doing something, if you're saying yes to something when you don't really mean it, it can feel kind of like a icky, constrictive kind of feeling to it, and it can lead to resentment. So, and then when you go into that situation, you already don't want to be there because you've said yes to something that you don't want to do, and it's going to then ripple out and affect how you interact with people as well. So this is why, to me, self-care is really important, not just for ourselves as an individual on an individual level and our own inner well-being, but it also affects how we show up in our lives and how we interact with other people as well. So if we are tired, burnt out, and all the rest of it, think of it this way. If it's coming from the people pleaser end of the spectrum, because I think most of the people that would be watching this or part of my community would be coming from that end of the spectrum, possibly to then coming into alignment with themselves and are somewhere along that journey. So if you needed support, advice, or someone to be there for you, and you wanted to go to your best friend and you love this person and you know that they're great, that's why they're your best friend, but you go to them and they're tired, they're frazzled, they're hectic, they haven't stopped, there's no self-care in their routine. So they come across as being completely frazzled, completely stressed out, possibly a bit moody, and maybe a little bit crabby and snappy. It's not going to be as helpful and supportive as you may need, and you may not feel seen and valued in that moment and in your time of need when you are showing up vulnerably to them and seeking their help and advice or whatever it is that you need. So, and it's the same with us. Our best friend could come to us, and if we're not practicing self-care, that's how we could present to them, and we're not showing up and giving the best of ourselves to that person. So by practicing self-care and taking the time that we need to nourish ourselves, whether that be physically, mentally, spiritually, then we're not going to be able to support them to the best of our ability. So by practicing self-care, not only are we looking after ourselves and creating a happier life and sense of well-being for ourselves, we're also enabling ourselves to support others within our immediate circle and community to a better extent, which to me just makes the world a better place and an easier place to live in, because nothing is all a bed of roses and completely happy 24/7. We all face things that we have to go through and need support of others to be able to get through it in a more rounded and easier, I was going to say happy, but that doesn't quite fit, in a more well-rounded way. So if we're all responsible for our own well-being to some extent and knowing how to look after ourselves, then we can support each other in a much better way. Thank you for listening to my ramble, and if you're still here to the end, thank you so much. I really appreciate and value you for being here. And if you're new and haven't seen any of my videos before and like what you see, please give me a thumbs up. Join the community by subscribing, and I post every Thursday evening at 8 p.m. UK time. And yes, so it's a weekly thing, and I will leave you all to it. Thank you for being with me. Love and light. Take care. Bye.